Welcome to Kyle Anthony's UFC betting show. I am Kyle Anthony and welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the prediction show for UFC 236, Dustin Poirier versus Max Holloway. We're going to talk about our best bet play that is currently for purchase on Wagertalk, link down in the description, as well as 2 free plays. And what I'm going to do this card is I'm going to focus on the main event and co-main event. A lot of people were talking about that they want to really dive into these two great 2 interim title fights and the co-main event and main event. People were talking to me on Twitter. Definitely follow me on Twitter at Mr. UFC Vegas. Always very active on there as well. But really looking forward to breaking these two down. But do not forget also, if this is your first time here, to subscribe. Hit the bell icon as well so you are notified when we are dropping content here. I like to drop these prediction shows Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and do my bet review show every Sunday, whenever I really get to it on Sunday, normally sometime in the afternoon after enjoying myself and watching the fights. So definitely want to let you guys know that. So do that, as well as like all the videos. That if it's really helping you guys out and you are enjoying the content, I always appreciate the support on the channel. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is the free play. We'll get right into it because I definitely want to talk about these two. There may be one I want to throw in at the end if we do have time. Don't want to make it too long. But the free play for this event is on the co-main event, and it is between Kelvin Gastelum and Israel Adesanya. So this fight here, this is another one here where, if you like Israel, you really think he's going to dominate. You like Kelvin, you really think he's going to dominate. So we're going to dive into a couple of things here, what their tendencies are. And again, here on this channel, I'm not going to be spewing out thousands of statistics and breaking down, jiu-jitsu grips. We're here to talk about betting. We're here to talk about 2 guys fighting, multiple paths to victory for somebody, where they can expose maybe a weakness on an opponent, and is the line right? Is the line right? And that is the most important part of this. We've talked about it multiple times on underdogs, where we feel that, hey, this is a right down the middle fight, and you got a guy who's plus 300, you take the plus 300. If you really believe that fight is down the middle, you're getting good odds on that fight. So if that's really what we're here, that's what we're here to do. So taking a look at this fight here, you've got Kelvin Gastelum. He is 15-3, and you've got Israel Adesanya, who is 16-0, 5-0 in the UFC. Current lines here, you've got Israel is a minus 182, and you've got Kelvin Gastelum is around a plus 145, 148, and definitely shop these around. I always suggest people going out there and getting the right line that you want. So here, first thing we're doing is break this down, is the one factor that is really sticking out over everybody in this fight is the size and the reach advantage of Israel Adesanya. Now, Israel Adesanya is going to have 8-9 inch reach advantage. He's going to have about a 5-inch height advantage. I mean, he's going to have a lot of advantages physically. And that's something that he's been able to show really throughout his mixed martial arts career and a lot within the UFC. Now, breaking down his last few fights here, the first thing that you're going to be taking a look at is his last fight against Anderson Silva. Now, this was a fight here that, there was, at this point in Silva's life of the UFC, he's done. I mean, I thought he looked okay, but I also think it was a lot of respect coming from Israel, a lot of respect coming from Anderson, and I don't think that they either really were looking to decimate the other. It was almost like a chess match than it really was an actual combat fight. 2 guys going at it and 2 guys that are trying to finish the fight. Didn't really see that really happening in that fight. I thought Israel looked good at certain spots, but I think in certain spots also, you did see that Anderson was landing and he was pushing a little bit. Now again, Israel, it was a lopsided victory for him, but again, it was not much to break down when you really take a look at it. And what I always like to do, rewatch all these fights, take a look, see what I see what I can bring to the channel. And that fight, I didn't really see too much on it, just because again, there was too much respect between these 2 guys. Now, the fight before that was against Derek Brunson. Now, against Derek Brunson here, this was a fight that I thought would be a tough fight for him. I thought it was definitely going to be a fight where you're going to have Brunson pushing forward, you're going to have Brunson looking for the takedowns, but I am not a big Derek Brunson fan. As in, I don't really think he's as big or as great as, maybe not great. Great is definitely not the word, because he's definitely not great. Not many people think he's great. But he's definitely not that upper caliber of a UFC fighter. I think that he's got nice, a decent ground game. He's shown that he can throw some power, but he has not really done that great. He's 2-4 out of his last 6 fights. So, and he's been brutally beaten in a couple of them, and it was a fight that Israel really picked him apart. But to me, Derek Brunson is not something that is really testing your skills when you're talking about really moving up against the tougher fighters. Now, prior to that was against Brad Tavares. Now, Brad Tavares' fight was a fight that people said, hey, this is a step up in competition. But Brad Tavares, slow, flat-footed. He does like to have pressure, and that's something that we're going to talk about. But that is something where Brad Tavares doesn't have the greatest stand-up game. He does not have, he doesn't really level change. He's good. I think he's good. He's in the middle of the road of fighters, and, he'll get some wins. And it's just, again, it's not a fighter that you can really say, this is a highlight win for Israel Adesanya. Now, 4 fights ago, I know it's going back a little bit, 4 fights ago, he fought Marvin Vettori. Now, against Vettori, this was one that I think is really the highlight of all of these. Now, Marvin Vettori is, again, not a guy that is upper echelon guy, but decent striking and a lot of pressure. And that, to me, is a path to victory against Israel. Now, if you've got that reach advantage, you've got to get in tight on him. You've got to push forward. You've got to really neutralize all of his rangy motion, all of his rangy strikes. You've got to really get inside. And that was something that when you take a look at this fight, and I'm sure most of you saw it, but the pressure was a lot to do with the fact that it was a split decision win for Israel. But you saw there were spots where he is vulnerable up against the cage. He's vulnerable when you pressure against him, you push forward. And that was something that Israel, I think, has started to correct. I think that moving forward, I think he's realized that, he comes from the kickboxing background. He's got fantastic striking. They really compare him to John Jones in the way that he fights, the way that he strikes, the way that he moves. A lot of that, I mean, very similar. I think they look alike in certain aspects of it. But, I think that when you talk about the clinch, when you talk about, grappling, John Jones is leaps and bounds ahead of him. And I think that Israel has such a fantastic base in the striking aspect. But when you take a look at it as a full-on mixed martial artist, that's where Kelvin Gastelum, we're going to get that in a second, where there could be passive victory for him. But with Vettori, that pushing forward, that momentum going forward, really making Israel utilize some of the close-range striking. And that's something that absolutely Israel does not want. I don't think that it's not like he's incapable of it, but that's going to be a weakness that I think that Kelvin Gastelum could possibly and potentially really exploit. Now you take a look here. Now the first thing where you take a look at Kelvin Gastelum is you take a look at the fact that over his last few fights, he has fought all around the world. I mean, he's finally fighting in the States. It's in Atlanta, Georgia. And in the last few fights he fought in Japan, Australia, and Brazil a few times. I mean, those are some grueling travel arrangements for anybody, but to have it back to back to back and be fighting in people's hometowns, that's very tough. That's very, very tough. And the fact that he was able to come out and get victories in most of those is even more impressive. But you take a look at the big thing that he does. Now, the big thing for Kelvin Gastelum is his 1-2 combination. I mean, he has a vicious 1-2 combination. Most of the time, he's really utilizing his hands, not really much utilizing kicks. It's not really his thing that he does, but he gets under. He's almost got that kind of Mike Tyson-esque kind of feel to him, where in the fact that he really likes to get low, he likes to really kind of almost get out of the range by just getting low enough and then working his way throwing heavy hooks. And that's been something throughout his career he's been able to do. And that's something here where he does like to push forward, where he does like to get in tight. That's something that can be exploited against somebody like Israel. Now, something that I also liked about Kelvin Gastelum is the fact that he brought Yair Rodriguez into camp, and he's been the guy that he's been working with. Now, Yair is not as rangy or as big as Israel is, but he has I think, a very close skill set to what Israel presents. We're talking about the spin kicks and the variety and the creativity that Israel brings. I think that's something that really can help him really figure out and kind of work his way around some of these striking attacks. And then I think also is a big thing is where he's elevating. I mean, I think that this is something where you take a look, we'll run through it real quickly. is what he's done over his last few fights. Now, after KOing Vitor Belfort, KOing Tim Kennedy, he went against Chris Weidman. Now, this almost looked like two guys that almost looked like a father against a son. I mean, Chris Weidman is massive for the division. You've got Gastelum, who is small for the division, and it was something that, you know what, you got a guy who's going to wrestle. You got a guy that's going to be pushing forward, who does not want to stand and strike with you. And in that fight, although Weidman ended up getting the victory in that third round submission victory over Kelvin, but early in that fight, Weidman was trying to stand with him. He got dropped. Kelvin Gastelum landed a big shot against Weidman. Weidman was dropped. It was almost a possibility of finishing the fight early in that first round. And that power that Kelvin has and that push forward is very tough. Now, the way that Weidman was able to really neutralize that was because of his wrestling. I mean, that was something where as soon as he got into trouble, he starts grappling. And the size overall against Kelvin is something very easy for a guy like Weidman, who is a, all-American wrestler, has great grappling skills. His striking was getting better. Definitely, I think that you've seen him get better over the years, but I would give that edge easily to Kelvin in that fight. But you saw that the path to victory for Weidman was not standing and striking, was take him to the ground, get him off of his feet, use your strength, get on top, and work from there. That was something that Weidman was able to do. Then after that, he went up against Michael Bisping, who had just lost the title. He ended up knocking out Michael Bisping in the first round in an impressive knockout against Michael Bisping. But the fight against Jacare is another fight where you've got another guy where he struggled. He ended up, Kelvin got that victory, but the fact that it's another guy, you've got to worry about the takedowns. You've got to worry about consistently being taken down. Now, that was a fight in Brazil and very, very close fight, but Kelvin was able to pull out that victory and get that victory against Jacare in Brazil. But the thing to me here is the fact that Kelvin Gastelum does not have to worry about takedowns. That is something that I think is very refreshing for him, and you've seen him really excel when he just has to strike. When he just has to worry about, I don't have to worry about any kind of takedowns against this fight against Israel Adesanya. I can just focus on my striking. I can work in tight, and a lot of times against even Weidman, it was almost like he was scared to get in tight. Almost same thing against Jacare. You do not want to get close to Jacare for too long. He's going to trap you, bring you down, and choke you out. So for him here in this situation, he has no worry at all of the takedowns. Now, of course, now you go back to the range part of it. I think the pressure is going to be a huge part of this, the way that Kelvin's going to move forward. He is like a little tank the way that he moves forward, and I think that he knows, without a doubt, and even Israel knows, of course, that is going to be his path to victory. But another path to victory I don't think a lot of people are talking about is the takedown opportunities for Kelvin Gastelum. Now, he is not Mr. Takedown. He is not, he has wrestling credentials, but that's not been his thing. He's been really relying on his power. And against even guys like Weidman, who, again, if he's got the wrestling, Weidman has the wrestling as well. You know what? Weidman's going to win there. He's definitely a better wrestler. He's got the strength. He's got the, he definitely has credentials. Same thing against Jacare. He's got the ground credentials over Kelvin Gastelum. Now, in this fight, it is Kelvin Gastelum who has that, definitely has the more elite wrestling compared to Adesanya, who has been very questionable. A lot of questions have gone around about, if you take Israel down, is that just,